Good evening. Happy Monday to you. I hope you are all well. Isn't it interesting how the theme of today, one of them is bring balance to the force we will or we can. And even listening to the sound of these tingshas, these bells, they bring us balance. They bring us into center. L-E-K, dear sister. Isn't that fantastic, right? The more into center, think about this. If we are a swirling, spinning disc, or if we have our energy swirling up in our bodies, like a tornado coming up like this, the more you move into the center, the more balance you find, right? So if you're on the outskirts of a spinning thing, it's really hard to stay in balance. It's a lot like our emotional dramas or traumas can throw us all over the place. But if you're the closer to the center you get, the easier it is to stay in balance, right? And then when you're in the center, you're just spinning around. You're not moving, you're just spinning around. There's a lot of stillness. It's like the eye of the storm. If you're around, if you know what a hurricane looks like, the hurricane has a lot of strong winds and even rain and everything, right? And in the outer outskirts of the hurricane, they can be very sizable, very big. But as you get to the closer part, to the center part of the hurricane, it's called the eye of the storm. The pressure is completely different at the center of this spinning vortex of wind and energy. And in the center, it's completely silent and completely quiet. So a lot like if you are in a hurricane and you end up in the center of it, you're in stillness. It's like when we move into our center and we find balance. Yes? Suddenly, when you're in balance, you're not going to fall as much. And even if you are in balance, you will detect when you start coming off track. You'll start to feel it a lot sooner. I remember when I was younger and I went through a lot of difficult times, and when I was a teenager, I was very much into alcohol because it was sort of the only stable point in my life. I used it for self-medication. And I was completely off balance. And then I got sober, and I was sober in the AA fellowship for 12 years. And at the end of those 12 years, I ended up leaving AA. And when I came back out into like regular society again, if you call it that, I started feeling like I had found my center. So I started, even though I would every now and then I would go off the deep end a little bit, but not very often. And whenever I did, I didn't like it. I felt uncomfortable. And I started realizing that, all these years being in AA and being fairly centered helped me to recognize when I was off center. And if we look at how when we are always out of balance, if you always run around the world and you're angry all the time, it's really easy to feel like that's almost normal. My normal state, I'm just angry. That's just who I am. And we don't know that what it feels like to not be angry. And then one day, if you start to experience what it's like to not be angry. You come to your center and you're like, whoa, I feel peace. Oh my God, I don't know what this feels like. And you may think you've gone crazy because you don't feel as angry anymore. But in reality, you just found stillness. And what you thought was yourself, the angry, negative, or sad, or heavy, or whatever it might have been, that self is not your true self. That's the trauma-responded self. That's the false self that we build as a response to trauma we experience when we grow up. So when we find our center coming back home, we actually kind of learn how to connect both to what we call Earth Mother, Life Force Energy, and Father Sky. And we live in the balance between Earth Mother and Father Sky, which we then also translate into divine masculine and divine feminine. And of course, in many ways, we can see that there's an equal balance between light and dark, between yin and yang. If you look at the yin and yang symbol, the Tao symbol, it's an exact balance, but it's a spinning balance, right? It's a swirling, much like our energies in our universe is swirling and spinning. This balance between the male and the female is of course far out of balance in our part of the world and in our state of the world. Like how the last 2,000 years, the masculine has gotten way, way, way far in overtaking the feminine. And it's been on many levels, but specifically it's been in the psychological, the version in our heads where we worship a deity of a male figure. And when we worship that deity as a male figure and not anything female, there's no femininity around it, right? There's only a divine God, and it's a he. There's no he, she, or no it. There's a he, and there is no she anywhere close to God. So we forget that the divine feminine is as important, if not more, in reality probably more, than the masculine, except we need both. We cannot get by without one or the other. And that's just how it is. Doesn't matter what we say about it. Our biology dictates that we need both genders to create more life. And in that level, in that sense, we need balance. But we've been so far out of balance the last 2,000 years, or more. The Abrahamic God is a very masculine-oriented God with very little feminine figures around. And that is a very unfortunate development, right? Because that has, in our subconscious mind, it has strengthened the place of the masculine and weakened the place of the feminine. So the feminine has become a threat to the controlling mind of the masculine, the toxic masculine that has developed, right? Because we have divine masculine and divine feminine. And then we have toxic masculine and toxic feminine. And as then they go hand in hand, right? No matter where on the scale one is, toxic masculine is going to bring with it toxic feminine, and vice versa. So if there's toxic feminine, that's going to bring with it a toxic masculine, because there's so much fear involved. It's so much about fear. And when we look at like what is divine masculine is holding space, creating a safe platform, being a strong warrior energy that can hold a framework for either a family or the divine feminine, but hold the framework. And within that framework, the divine feminine is in charge of creation. It's creating life. And as we look at the human body, we'll see that while the feminine needs the masculine to spark life within, it needs the masculine to start the life, then after that moment of inception, the feminine, the female body, can create life all on its own. And from that moment, the feminine, of course, does better with a divine masculine holding space. And of course, it's safer that way. But it doesn't need the masculine the way to keep creating life. Life is now, the spark has ignited, and life is now happening. Within the womb of the woman, it keeps growing. So what we kind of, if we look at the movement in nature, it's very similar, where we have a seed that falls from a tree or a plant into the soil, right? And in the soil, in the safety of the soil, there are minerals and water that goes in to help to sprout the seed. And the seed begins to sprout within the earth, right? And then when it hits, it comes up to the level of the surface, right? You have the sunlight coming in, and they're supporting the plant to keep growing, providing energy, basically almost holding space. But it's still within the feminine, within Earth Mother, that life grows. And this process is very much the same in almost all of our living species. So if we look at like even how and the acorn drops its or the oak drops its acorns and how they grow in the soil is also very similar to the reproduction process of humans, of other animals, other species. And I find it fascinating to see, if we look at how everything is a reflection, how the processes are very similar. If you look at whatever you look at, the processes are very, very similar. And it's all a matter of this divine dance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. There's the dance. And what then happens when there is fear that comes in, basically staccato, or basically like it goes out of resonance, it goes into dissonance. We lose rhythm. We could call it that we lose rhythm. One of the dancers miss the rhythm and step out of rhythm and steps on each other's toes or something, and suddenly the dance has stopped. And now they're trying to get back in the dance, but it's stunted because it's fear-based. Because, oh my God, we got to get back on the dance floor. And if we look at that from what's going on with what was the divine masculine went into toxicity as it started trying to control everything. As the divine masculine started going into, well, in order for me to hold this framework, everybody has to do what I want. They have to do what I'm saying, what I tell them to. And when we go into that space, or even in a relationship, if one of the two partners is fully controlling the other, then we end up in a space of a very dysfunctional, fear-driven, fear-based space. And the divine feminine can no longer be in its divinity. It goes into toxicity, and the divine masculine goes into its toxic state. And when we look at these different traits, that on a certain level, the dance, like an expression of creativity and creation of life, creation of both life inside of the womb, but also creation of energy, creation of love, the frequency of love, right? One of those things that are happening right now in our society is that there's a big push from what I refer to as the matrix, the society, government, systems. It's a huge push of getting everything further into toxic masculinity, which means the control, and which means that everything is in a system. Everything is in systems everywhere, and we need the system to work, not so much the individual, but the system. And the system is always based in like computer programs and mathematical, or whatever, formulas and stuff, right? Which means that everything is set within a box. Thinking that, well, that's how life works. It's in the box. And it's only safe if we do exactly what everybody says or what the rules are. And it takes away the idea of love, the idea of real, true creation, which is what divine feminine stands for. Right? There's the male divine man, they have a lot of movement too, gusto, they have a lot of energy too. But the divine feminine really stands for a lot of creation. Rage Against the Machine, exactly, Jolie. I love it, yeah. But it's funny, Rage Against the Machine raged against the machine until they raged for the machine. The last few years they've raged completely for the machine, which has been really unfortunate, at least the way I see it. Like, they went gung-ho into supporting the shots and all of that stuff, and that didn't work for me anymore. But raging against the machine, of course, just like raging against the dying of the light, when we see that the divine masculine, the divine feminine had a dance, but that dance is out of rhythm. It's in fear now. And now the divine feminine, which used to be revered back in the more matriarchal societies, Many indigenous societies in many parts of India, many parts of different Africa had very matriarchal societies. There were Native American tribes that had it that way. And a lot of them were different in energy than the patriarchal societies. None of them are either right or wrong. They're just different. And when we start looking at then what happened when we started worshiping more and more a he in the clouds. Well, a he in the clouds is both what we could call left brain orientation, because that's where the masculine runs the show, logic, everything in the box. And the feminine, which we also can refer to as Earth Mother, is below us, right? So we are looking, we're praying to something up there. Please save us from something evil. And we're always aiming upwards. And then we started thinking of like, if everybody can just behave the way we think they should behave in the box, then we'll all be safe. And quite often the divine feminine they don't even have a box. The divine feminine expresses life through creation, through dance, through movement. That's not in the box. And it shouldn't be in the box. My God, I wish we could just break the box. And so the divine feminine started being pushed down, right? And we also connected it to Earth Mother. And then we started saying that hell is below. So hell started becoming equated to Earth Mother. And somewhere along the lines, potentially when Christianity started growing in its organized form, we started seeing all these, healers and witches and witch lords, warlords as evil. And as that they were in cahoots with demons. And when we thought so, we started looking at everything connected to Earth Mother as hell. And without understanding that originally Hades was below us, but that's where people went when they died, not hell. It was Hades. It wasn't like a bad place in that way. There were realms of it that were bad, but Hades itself was just a place you went to. But then it became hell below us and heaven above. And heaven was good and hell was bad. And unfortunately, that also meant that subconsciously we are kind of thinking as the feminine as a little bit connected to hell and the masculine is connected to heaven. And it's a very, very, very toxic movement, right? That made so that men were running the world while the feminine was not even considered that important. And it's so toxic and so unfortunate because we now created a world where love is not important, where feelings are considered problems or drama. They're not considered healing. They're not considered healthy. And what happens then? Well, then we create this society where everything needs to be in the box, and this society where all of us are, if we're not doing exactly what we're told and exactly to fit in the box, you're a problem you're a menace to the box. But the people in the box are now starting to feel the consequences of it. They're starting to feel the stressors. They're starting to feel the negativity that comes when you're not living in flow of nature, when we're not living in touch with nature any longer. Because that's the third part of the problem here is we said that Earth Mother was connected to hell, to sin, to negative things. And Earth Mother is also nature. And then we started creating more and more cities. And all these cities, we started over the last 500 years or more, we've been more and more and more polluting, right? And now the pollution levels are insane from the city, right? And most of that is because we are so disconnected from Earth Mother. We are so disconnected from a natural form of life, a natural way of living. And being that disconnected from it means that we don't even understand that we are ravaging our planet. We don't see it as a problem because I can just go and buy stuff at the store. Not knowing where all the trash goes when we're done with it. Not knowing all the animals that had to die so we could get bacon or whatever it is we're getting. And we don't see the consequences of our actions because we're not connected. So if we can come back to Earth Mother, and when we come back to nature, learning from the plants, from the trees, from the birds, from the eagle in the sky, from the horses, from the cows, from the bison, from any of the animals. When we learned, we start to feel different. And suddenly, stress leaves your life. And suddenly, you feel a new sense of centeredness. And suddenly, social media isn't the only reality out there. And suddenly, the bills or whatever it might be is not the only reality out there. So as we grow in understanding, we start coming into balance. And this balance is important. And again, it's also important to see that even though toxic masculinity is terrible, and just like toxic femininity is actually terrible, we need to take responsibility all over on both sides of the spectrum. We can also see that divine feminine, the dance of life, the creation of life, the beauty of love, of feelings, of expression is amazing. And so is divine masculine. And divine masculine, as a holder of space, as a framework holder, sometimes have to be very, very hard. Sometimes we have to be warriors. Sometimes we have to step up to the plate and say, no, this is not okay. And that is one of the gifts of the divine masculine. Because without it, we wouldn't have a safe space. And that doesn't mean, then that's where it went toxic, when we go out to war. The way we do nowadays, that's toxic. If we come back home and we're holding space in a healthy way, for yourself, for your family, in a healthy way, whew, that's very different. It's very different. And especially when we're coming from a spiritual point of view, especially when we've had a spiritual awakening, when we've had an experience of, oh my God, silence is real, stillness is real. A sense of life is real, beyond the level of mind, beyond what's going on the thinking hat, in the thinking process. There's a sense of living that's reality. And one way to find it is to go out into nature and spend days out there, spend time out there. And like Ellie Kay, she's got her loving cats, or Jolene, she's got her animals at home. And these are a way to remember that life is more than just the human and just the cell phone and just the computer. So, yeah, that was a lot about our toxic masculine and toxic feminine. I hope most of it made a lot of sense. And then we also talked about bringing balance to the force, because balance is that yin and the yang equality, true equality between the divine feminine and divine masculine. And of course, this is not gender related only. This is inside of each one of us too. Each one of us has a balance or an imbalance between the masculine and the feminine. And when we come into balance inside of ourselves, we can hold space and we can express creativity, we can express love. And then we don't want to be completely out of balance either way, because it's not healthy for anybody. So we're going to go into the healing part of this. I hope you are having a good evening here. I'm having my cacao. If you're new to this, just open yourself up, open up your heart, come back home, take a few deep breaths. There are going to be some intense sounds working their way through me. There might be intense experiences coming through you. And with your permission, we'll be working with your energy. Alrighty. Take a few deep breaths as I open up sacred space for us. A bit heavy, huh? These cords that are around you are a little bit heavy. It's a little soggy, I guess, to cut them off. With your permission, we'll work on your energy. Been a lot of heavy energies this last week, and this week it's gotten better. Goes up and down. Tuuta iya. Mahikuta iya. Taua johukuta iya. Iu. 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 Tajua. Tajua iu. Iua iu. Iua iu. Iua iu. Tajua here. Sink into your body. Sink into yourself. Mayokutaya, dea, 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 dea. Mayokutaya, Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murataye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murataye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murataye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murataye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, thank you. And just a bit of a shameless plug here at the end. Check out my book, The Four Elements. That was a Freudian slip. The Four Elements We Are, Earth Mother, by me, Healing with Marcus. You can find it on Amazon or on my website. So, I hope you're well. I hope you had a good session. I hope this felt good for you. There are a few videos coming out this week. One is about the new teaching of this age. We are finding a new teaching is coming through for this time. And it's the teaching that each one of us is our own inner light. You are your own guru, you are your own healer, you are your inner self, your higher self is in touch with the divine, in touch with the soul, the oversoul, the collective. And that is how you, by you strengthening your connection to that, that's our healing. Oh, Ellie K. That's beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So glad to hear it. And then the last final episode of Breaking Free from the Matrix is coming out, episode 10. So check that out as well. I'm so grateful we're all here. I'm grateful we're a growing group, such healing magical connection. Yes, it is, LEK, right? It's fantastic how we work through the field, right? We are all connected in the quantum field. And in these situations and these healings that we do here, it becomes pretty obvious and pretty clear that we are connected in the field. Beyond the phone, beyond YouTube, beyond the Wi-Fi, we are still connected. We just didn't know it as clearly before. We're starting to find out. So, all right, beloved, you have a wonderful week, everybody. Thank you so much for being on board. And I'm looking forward to next time. And don't forget to check out my Substack. There's a podcast every week. Jolie Robot, who's on here, 11. She was our first guest last week, and then or the week before. And last week we had a woman named April. We're having a guy coming out with a new book. So the podcast is actually pretty exciting. It's about how to heal the world. Heal the world, it's called, on Substack. All right. I hope you're all well, beloved. Thank you, Ellie. So much love to all. Have a beautiful week. Namaste. And aho. Tawa heikko.